But then here we are at the opposite side of the gunpowder, little gunpowder that is. The gunpowder itself glimmering down below. Well, kind of, sort of. So I guess now we'll continue east or north on the Manpa timetable in this direction. To our left is the former narrow gauge line. Once again, it had its own crossing of the gunpowder before the standard gauge line was put in. But of course that was long wiped out back in 1901. As said before, the narrow gauge line crosses over the standard gauge line and looks like a sine wave on an oscilloscope. The narrow gauge cut one more time. Here's the first spot on this side of the little gunpowder where it crossed over this line and then bore down that way, although one can barely tell right now due to the growth and the erosion. Over here we're again on a high fill on the standard gauge line, but the narrow gauge line would have taken a trestle over this gully. The one abutment would have been right there. Other abutment would have been on that side through there, but both long gone now. Over there is where the east abutment would have been for that trestle over the gully. You can tell the narrow gauge fill over there. Over here the standard gauge line passed through a deep cut one more time, but our trail takes the narrow gauge line around the cut as it did before. Very impressive cut there. We're going around this way to the narrow gauge line. Again, there's the right of way for it, and this trail curves onto it. Then there again is a Little Gunpowder Falls, the site of some skinny dipping back in the 70s. Wish you were here, and wish I was there. Alright, back to our narrow gauge line. We will soon rejoin the standard gauge line up around the bend. If you recall, I mentioned in my last video a trail known as the Eyes. If you stayed on that trail and followed all the way out, you'd be coming this way automatically eventually. The two connect on this side of Little Gunpowder Falls. And up here the standard gauge cut emerges, and we're back on the standard gauge right of way, while the narrow gauge continues to crisscross us for the next mile or so. Got some vegetation here obscuring the standard gauge fill, but the path somehow makes its way through. Over here is a spot where the narrow gauge line wavered a bit. It bore to the left a bit over there, and that there vegetation then crosses us again further up. So hope you're enjoying your walking tour of the Manpa so far. I know she is. And still on a high fill, overlooking Little Gunpowder. Skinny dippers. And over there again where the narrow gauge ran, but almost totally grown over. In this spot, the narrow gauge and standard gauge straddle each other. But up here, the narrow gauge line stops straddling and goes off its own way that direction through that brush. Again, the narrow gauge line bypasses the rocks while we cut through them on the standard gauge line. Another impressive cut up ahead. But this cut's so deep, it's almost dark. In fact, for all you B&O heads, and you know who you are, the Manpa here is like the B&O's old main line. The old main line is built, ran back and forth like narrow gauge line does here, except the B&O was never narrow gauge. There's some good examples of that near Union Dam and west of Sykesville, where the old line cuts back and forth across the current line. For all you B&O heads, and as I said, you know who you are, so I won't mention names. But the B&O got straightened in 1905, and the Manpa got straightened in 1900. The Manpa beat the B&O by 5 years. So take that, all you B&O heads. I should have called myself Mr. Manpa, but there's someone else who deserves that honor more than I do. The late Charles T. Mann. He photographed the Manpa extensively in the 40s and 50s. Someone just took a flash picture. And over here, the narrow gauge line re-emerges and crosses over this line and goes over to the left again, up ahead there where she is. Just like B&O. What? CSX? On the Manpa, we don't use that kind of language. Nope, on the Manpa we keep it clean. Anyway, the narrow gauge line ran through there, where it's now all grown over. No wonder they beat the B&O by 5 years. They kind of sort of had to. I guess the B&O saw what the Manpa did and took a hint. Over there, one can make out some of the lush right-of-way of the narrow gauge line. In fact, that's a very wide swing the narrow gauge line took at this point. Here's our standard gauge line, way over here. And there it is again. But up ahead, it crosses us again. And up here, that happens. It crosses over our line here, and it goes around that way. It goes around the hill that the main line, the standard gauge line, cuts through one more time. Another impressive cut where it's almost dark. And again over here, the narrow gauge line crossing this one comes out of there and goes off this direction again to the left, down that way. Right through there. And a leftover railroad tie. Of course, this place hasn't seen a train since 1959. But over there's an impressive gash in the narrow gauge line. I believe a trestle would have been there at one time. A small trestle or bridge of sorts to carry the line over the gash. Whereas the standard gauge line just has a fill, getting it through the little gully, and that's it. In fact, here, the standard gauge line looks wide enough for 2 tracks. Yes, there were some spots where Manpa actually had double track. Believe that one or not. Yes, indeed, here with nature. And our avian friends. And still even got leftover gravel from the 50s and before. And again, the narrow gauge line emerging and about to cross over. Although at this point it's higher than the standard gauge line is here. Then went up there to the right someplace. It went right through there. But at this point it's a couple feet higher than this line. Can't explain that one. Except back in 1888, they couldn't grade stuff for crap. But again, one more semi-impressive cut here. And a straightaway in the Manpa. Tricky using the word straightaway and Manpa in the same sentence. So here it is. The year 3013. And walking along the CSX Old Main Line. Your look into the future. Brought to you by your bullfrog. So with that in mind, can you believe it's been 1,000 years since the last Gevo passed through here? With its Q designation? Alright, back to the past. Once again, you guessed it, the narrow gauge line coming out. And up ahead there, the former site of the Overshot Trestle. Aptly named because it crossed Overshot Run. The standard gauge line would have had the trestle straight ahead. The narrow gauge trestle would have been a little over this direction. Right through there. And right there was the abutment for the standard gauge Overshot Trestle. The narrow gauge one would have been further down over there when it existed and before the trees grew. Now down by Laurel Brook Road, and that's facing northwest on it, directly below the spot of the Overshot Trestle. We were just right up there through the trees. You can maybe make out one trestle support there in the woods. Right there. That would have been the standard gauge trestle support, with narrow gauge being over here a bit further. But now support's totally gone. But up there would have been the abutment for it. And down below here is Overshot Run itself. And more trestle supports for the Overshot Trestle. There. And one more over there. And a few more in the woods on the hillside that you can't see due to the vegetation. But the line would have continued right up there someplace. Way up there. I'm going towards Fallston, Bel Air, and finally on to York, Pennsylvania. So, hope you enjoyed your miniature walking tour of the Manpa in Little Gunpowder Valley. I'll have more Manpa eventually to come, including some classic photos. So you might want to stick around. Take it from her. She's been sticking around for the past 45 years.